Hello friends, and welcome back to Mothership. Today I'm going to give you a review of my Ooni Koda 16. Sound good? Let's get started. So before we get started guys, it's worth noting that I paid for this thing with my own money, so all of my opinions are going to be my own and I am getting nothing from Ooni. Now I bought this a couple of weeks ago, so I've had quite a lot of time to do quite a few cooks on it. I think I'm in a good place now where I can kind of go over some of the things I like and some of the things I don't really like. But overall my opinion is pretty favorable on this thing. Now first things first, let's go over some of the specs of this unit. The opening on the front is approximately 22 inches wide, and the actual cooking area is 16 inches wide. The other model you can get is the 12, which is a little bit cheaper, but it is more difficult to get your pizzas in, and it means your pizza size is going to be pretty limited. As far as the opening itself, we're looking at approximately about 5 inches. And then for depth, we're looking at about 25 inches. And then the total height here is about 14 really, and this thing weighs about 40 pounds. Now this model is the Koda, which means that it runs off of propane. There is an attachment where you can turn this into run off of natural gas, but this one will not run off of different types of fuel. That would be the other model, the Caro. Now the Caro has the ability for you to use right out of the box charcoal or actual wood. I opted for the propane for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to just start up rather than start a fire. And number two, it's probably more efficient. It'll come back to heat faster. You don't have to muck around with the flames. But the real thing for me is the shape of the burner, which I'll show you when we actually light it up. The burner is L-shaped. Now you can get a attachment that goes into your Caro that'll turn into a natural gas or a propane grill. The problem is you're only gonna have that one burner in the very back of the machine. What I also really like about this model versus the other one is you actually have your propane knob on the side here. So turning up and down the flame, you can actually look in the front while turning this. If you're getting with the Caro and you have the attachment on the back, you actually have to reach all the way to the back, turn it, and then come back and look and see what your flames look like. Now fuel consumption isn't too bad on this machine. Apparently the Caro with the attachment runs through a lot more fuel, but this I've used quite a few times and I don't think my tank is even at half. So you could probably get maybe 10, 15, maybe even more cooks out of this thing, especially if you're doing multiple pizzas. You do have a startup time of at least a half an hour usually to get it up to temp. That really depends on how cold it is. Usually at nights here it's been about 65 and it's taken me about 30 minutes. Right now I think it's about 67 and we'll start it up at some point because I am going to make some pizzas. We'll see how long it actually takes. As far as the machine itself, depending on where you want to put it, I have mine just on a wooden table and underneath there it hasn't gotten hotter than about 95 degrees, which is something I'm comfortable with. Obviously, you know, the liability for Ooni, they say put it on like a metal table. They do actually say wood's fine, but it's not going to get so hot where you really have to worry about stuff melting, although I would probably shy away from putting it on anything plastic. I said before it's about 40 pounds. It's not that heavy. It's just unwieldy. So I've tried to put it, you know, into my basement, then bring it up the stairs and put it out here. It's kind of a pain. With two people, it's easier, but it is a pain to move this thing around. So if you're getting the 16-inch, leaving it outside would probably be ideal, or maybe in a garage or on something that wheels around. As far as leaving it outside long term, I would get a cover. Not so much for the machine. I'm not really worried about that getting wet. I'm more worried about the pizza stone. So if you are gonna leave it outside, bring the pizza stone inside, because once you get moisture in there and if you heat it up, you might crack it, which is a problem with pizza stones in general. So I would just pull that out if you do plan to leave your machine outside long term. So those are the basics of the machine. I mean, it's pretty standard. It's just an oven that attaches to propane. It's not a lot going on here. But what's important is how does it actually cook pizza, which is what you want it for. So what we're gonna do is fire it up. I'll show you what the burner looks like and why that's important. And then what we're gonna do is count how long it actually takes for this thing to get up to a temperature that you can throw a pizza on. Like I said, we're a little bit south of 70 degrees Fahrenheit right now. So this is kind of your standard temperature. Obviously it'll take longer in the cold and it'll take less time in the warm. But let's get her fired up. So you can see in here, the whole back edge and the left side are burners, which means you kind of have an L shape of a fire. Now that's important because it allows your pizzas to cook a little bit more evenly. You don't have to turn it as much. If you just have the flame in the back, that means you have to turn your pizza more often to make sure that it's always, you know, directly getting some flame on each side. Now I really like that, and that was a major reason why I bought this versus the Caro, which has, you know, with the attachment, only the flame in the very back. Now one issue I did have with this machine, actually the first time I used it, is that I couldn't get the stone above like 500 degrees, which is absolutely way too low for this machine. And what it turns out happens is, if it doesn't light automatically, there's a safety valve somewhere within either the hose or the regulator, and it basically puts your machine kind of into safe mode, and it limits the amount of propane that can go through. I think it's just a safety thing if, you know, you have a gas leak. So what you have to do to fix it, you have to turn off your propane tank, you have to unscrew your hose directly, let it sit for a couple seconds to get all of the propane to come out of the tube. Then you put it back on, Attach it, slowly open the valve, and then when you actually light your machine, there's a click, and that's like a igniter piece that's igniting all of the propane that's coming out through your burners. Hold that in for longer than it says. Usually it says to hold it in for a couple seconds. Hold it in for like 20 seconds. That'll make sure that you're really, really lit and everything's good. And then you should be good to go. That kind of takes it out of safe mode. Basically, you want this stone to be somewhere above 750 degrees Fahrenheit. So what we need to do is wait, and I'm gonna keep checking the middle of the stone until we get to the temperature where we're able to throw a pizza on. Okay, we're at 23 minutes, and our pizza stone is hitting that 750 degree mark in the very center of the stone, which means it is perfect temp to launch a pizza. I just threw one together. Let's get it on there, and I'll show you how quick it is to actually churn out a good pizza. All right, right before we launch it, let's drop the temperature down so we don't burn the top. Now let's check the bottom. Give it a little spin. Some nice leopard spotting on the bottom there. Let's give this another turn. And I think that's done. Oof, looks pretty good to me. Let's get inside, let's cut it up and see what it looks like. After resting for a couple minutes, here's our final pizza. Let's give it a nice cut. If we want to look from the side, I mean, nice and fluffy. That's what we're looking for. Nice leopard spotting on the bottom. I probably could have let this go a little bit further, but I am still new to this. But this pizza, I'd say, is pretty darn good and one that I would actually probably pay for and be pretty happy with. My biggest problems when I started were kind of burning on the bottom. Not an issue, as you can see, but for the amount of time it took to make this, pretty darn easy. I did also leave the uni on after I made this, just to see how long it would take to get to temp to put another pizza on, and it was approximately 3 minutes. So you can really crank out pizzas, honestly, with this thing. Now, before I get into my thoughts on this thing, I gotta have a bite here. I really can't complain about that pizza. All of the ones that I've produced on this have been fantastic. Obviously, the first ones we did were either too burned in some cases or undercooked, but we've started to dial in there. This pizza probably could have gone on for like maybe 10 more seconds, but I'm perfectly fine having it a little bit on the less done side versus the overdone side. As far as recipes and all that, at some point I'll do videos on making pizzas in the future. If you're interested, obviously stick around. But for now, I'm just gonna go over the machine and we won't talk about how to make the pizzas. Now, what are my thoughts on the machine? First of all, it's pretty fantastic. I mean, if you just got one of these gifted to you, you're not gonna be mad about it. However, there are some downsides. Number one, the price. This thing's about 600 bucks. It's a whole lot of money to spend on something just to make pizza. And if your thought is, it's cheaper than buying pizza, I mean, how often are you buying pizza that this is really gonna be worth it? This is if you wanna make your own stuff. You want to control the ingredients. You want to have parties over and make pizzas. If you're that kind of person, this really is for you. I'm really enjoying it. I'm sure we're going to do a lot of cooks on it. We're going to have people over and have pizza parties, all that kind of stuff. And if you have the space for it and the money, it's definitely worth it. If you're looking for something with a little bit smaller footprint, you could always get the 12. I think the 16 is really worth it just from the size, especially if you're new. Launching pizzas, moving them around will be a lot easier on a bigger machine. However, it's much bigger and it weighs a lot more and it takes a lot more space. So if you don't have those, well, you're kind of stuck. Now, as far as using the gas versus the machine that does different types of wood or charcoal, honestly, you're cooking a pizza in 2 minutes. I really don't think you're getting too much of that wood flavor. Some people are probably going to disagree with that significantly. I'm not so sure it's really worth it, or if there really is a big difference. Now, the one thing I have heard that might change that is when you're cooking wood, you're releasing some moisture from the wood. That could add a little bit to the way you're cooking the pizzas. I could see that being the case. As far as actually getting smoke, you're not going to get any smoke. However, you might get some of that moisture, which might make a difference. However, that L shape I think is a game changer. So I showed you the burners cook like this. If you have just the Karu with the back, you're only going to have the flame right here, so you're going to have to constantly move it. And if you're new to this whole game like I am, the more times you're mucking around with it, the less likely or the more likelihood you're going to screw something up. So I really like the L because it allows me to just move it a couple times and get that good pizza. Now, as you can see from my product, great leoparding, everything looks great. I have only done Neapolitan style pizzas on here, not Detroit or New York. At some point I'll try that, but as far as just the Neapolitan, everything has been really, really good. We've started to load them up on toppings, and as long as you can handle moving it around on your peel, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Now, obviously the cons are, like I said, price, portability, and then just the learning curve. But if you're interested in spending the money and learning how to use it, I think it's definitely worth it. There are different pizza ovens out there. Gosney makes one. I think there's a couple other brands you can probably buy at Home Depot or Lowe's. Or if you want to go really, really expensive, you can get ones for like $5,000 that are basically the same thing. I don't want to say this is an entry point, but as far as pizza ovens, it's probably actually on the cheaper side. But it really is a nice machine, and I'm really enjoying it. So that's basically it, guys. My review is, if you're the kind of person that actually wants to muck around and learn how to use this, and you have the space and the cash, absolutely get it. If either of those ideas aren't really 100% you, maybe stay away from it, or maybe look into the 12 or something else that's a little bit cheaper. Now, all that being said, I hope you guys got something out of this. I'm really enjoying this thing. You're going to see more content in the future if you stick around. Now, if for some reason you got something out of this video and I might have pushed you towards actually buying it, please consider using my Amazon link down below. Doesn't cost you anything extra, but it forces Amazon to give me a kickback. I don't have an Ooni code because I'm not affiliated with Ooni. I just have that Amazon link. But most importantly, guys, whether you buy one of these or not, always cook something fantastic. Enjoy what you're making, and I'll see you guys on the next UFO barbecue. Bye-bye.